In 1999, adventure-seeking couple Derek and Amanda Harrison vanished without a trace while exploring the remote Nevada desert near Ash Springs. Their red Ford Explorer found abandoned 3 days later, with camping gear scattered but no sign of the young photographers who had set out to capture the untouched beauty of the sand dunes for their travel blog. 7 years later, a team of desert researchers investigating abandoned mining structures would make a discovery that would finally reveal the shocking truth about what happened to Derek and Amanda in those vast, unforgiving dunes. The Harrison couple had been inseparable since meeting in college, their shared passion for adventure and photography binding them together in a relationship that friends described as electric with possibility. Derek, 28, worked as a freelance photographer for outdoor magazines, while Amanda, 26, wrote compelling travel narratives that brought remote destinations to life for readers who would never venture beyond their suburban comfort zones. Together, they had built a modest but growing online presence, documenting their expeditions across the American Southwest. Their red Ford Explorer becoming as recognizable to their followers as their infectious enthusiasm for discovering places that existed far from the beaten path. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Their final journey began on a crisp October morning, when they loaded their vehicle with camping equipment, camera gear, and enough supplies for what they planned as a 4-day expedition to photograph the pristine sand dunes near Ash Springs. The location had been recommended by a fellow photographer who described it as one of the last truly untouched desert landscapes in Nevada, a place where the dunes shifted with ancient patience and the silence felt profound enough to hear your own heartbeat. Amanda had been particularly excited about the trip, having researched the area's history and discovered that early prospectors had once worked claims in the region, leaving behind scattered remnants of their dreams and disappointments. The couple's enthusiasm was evident in their final social media posts, Derek sharing a photograph of their packed Explorer with the caption, "Ready for another adventure in the Nevada wilderness," while Amanda posted a thoughtful piece about the allure of places that remained unchanged by human development. Their followers responded with the usual mixture of admiration and concern, some expressing worry about the remote location, while others praised the couple's commitment to documenting America's hidden natural treasures. When Derek and Amanda failed to return by their planned date, Amanda's sister Sarah contacted park rangers, who immediately launched a search effort that would eventually involve dozens of volunteers, helicopter overflights, and ground teams combing thousands of acres of desert terrain. The discovery of their abandoned Ford Explorer on the third day of searching provided the first concrete evidence of their fate. But what investigators found at the scene raised more questions than it answered. The vehicle sat empty, approximately 15 miles from their intended camping location, positioned at the base of a small ridge that offered some protection from the desert winds. Their camping equipment lay scattered in a rough circle around the Explorer, as if they had begun setting up camp before something interrupted their routine. Personal items were strewn across the sand, including Amanda's camera bag with expensive equipment still inside, and Derek's hiking boots placed neatly beside the vehicle's rear bumper. Most puzzling was the absence of any clear tracks leading away from the site, the desert wind having erased most evidence of human passage. Search teams expanded their efforts across an increasingly wide radius, following every possible lead and theory about what might have happened to the missing couple. The initial assumption was that they had become lost while hiking, possibly seeking a better vantage point for photography, and had succumbed to the harsh desert conditions. Experienced desert rescue volunteers knew that even seasoned outdoor enthusiasts could quickly become disoriented in the vast expanse of sand and rock, where landmarks were few and the margin for error was measured in hours rather than days. Rangers interviewed other visitors to the area, hoping to find someone who might have encountered Derek and Amanda or noticed anything unusual during that October weekend. They discovered that the couple had stopped for supplies in the small town of Caliente 2 days before their disappearance, where store owner Margaret Chen remembered them as a friendly young couple who had asked detailed questions about access roads to the dunes and the best locations for sunrise photography. Margaret had warned them about the area's reputation for sudden weather changes and the importance of staying with their vehicle if they became lost. The search effort intensified when investigators realized that Derek and Amanda were experienced desert travelers who understood basic survival principles and were unlikely to have made elementary mistakes. Derek had completed wilderness survival courses and carried a GPS device, while Amanda maintained detailed trip logs and always informed family members of their exact itinerary. The couple's preparation and experience made their disappearance all the more mysterious, suggesting that whatever had happened to them was not a simple case of getting lost or running out of supplies. As days turned into weeks, the search teams began exploring more remote areas of the desert, following old mining roads and investigating abandoned structures that dotted the landscape. The region's history was written in the scattered remains of prospecting efforts, with rusted equipment and collapsed buildings marking the dreams of men who had sought fortune in the harsh environment. Search volunteers found themselves drawn to these remnants of human habitation, reasoning that Derek and Amanda might have sought shelter in one of the old structures if they had encountered trouble. The investigation took on a more somber tone as the possibility of finding the couple alive diminished with each passing day. Desert survival experts explained that even experienced adventurers could survive only a limited time without water, and the October weather, while not as extreme as summer conditions, still posed significant challenges for anyone caught unprepared. The scattered camping equipment suggested that Derek and Amanda had not left their vehicle voluntarily, leading investigators to consider more troubling possibilities about their fate. Amanda's family arrived from Colorado to join the search efforts, bringing with them a deeper understanding of the couple's habits and personalities. Her father, Robert, was a retired park ranger who had taught his daughter to read desert terrain and respect the environment's dangers. He studied the scene where the explorer had been found, noting details that might have escaped the attention of investigators less familiar with Derek and Amanda's specific routines. Robert observed that the couple's camp setup was incomplete, in ways that suggested they had been interrupted during their normal process of establishing a base camp. The search operation gradually scaled back as winter approached, though park rangers and volunteers continued periodic sweeps of the area whenever new information emerged. The case file remained open, but the practical reality was that the vast Nevada desert held countless places where two people could disappear without leaving recoverable evidence. Family members struggled with the uncertainty, unable to properly grieve without knowing what had happened to their loved ones, while the couple's online followers created memorial pages and shared theories about their fate. During the months following the initial search, investigators received occasional reports of possible sightings or discoveries, each one raising hopes that were ultimately disappointed. A hiker reported finding pieces of camping equipment in a remote canyon 30 miles from the explorer's location, but the gear proved to belong to other travelers. Another searcher claimed to have seen human remains near an old mining shaft, but the investigation revealed only the bones of wildlife that had fallen into the abandoned excavation. The passage of time brought a different kind of sadness to those who had known Derek and Amanda, as the initial urgency of the search gave way to the slow acceptance that they might never learn the truth about what happened. Amanda's sister Sarah continued to visit the area periodically, walking the same trails and studying the same landscape that had somehow claimed her sister and brother-in-law. She found herself drawn to the old mining sites, wondering if the answer to their disappearance might lie hidden among the remnants of earlier human presence in the desert. Years passed with no new developments in the case, though the story of Derek and Amanda Harrison became part of the local folklore surrounding the Ash Springs area. Park rangers would occasionally mention their disappearance to visitors as a cautionary tale about the desert's unforgiving nature, while longtime residents of nearby towns remembered the massive search effort and the young couple whose adventure had ended so mysteriously. The case files remained in the sheriff's office, a reminder of questions that seemed destined to remain unanswered. In 2006, 7 years after Derek and Amanda's disappearance, a team of researchers from the University of Nevada was conducting a survey of historical mining sites in the Ash Springs region, documenting the locations and conditions of abandoned structures for a comprehensive study of early mining activities in southern Nevada. The team, led by Dr. Patricia Hendricks, was particularly interested in the smaller, more remote sites that had been overlooked by previous historical surveys. Their work involved creating detailed maps and photographic records of mining-related structures, many of which were slowly being reclaimed by the desert environment. The research team's methodology required them to investigate even the most isolated and deteriorated structures, following old mining roads and footpaths that led to forgotten claims and abandoned camps. On a clear morning in late spring, graduate student Michael Torres was documenting a collapsed prospector's shack approximately 20 miles from where Derek and Amanda's vehicle had been found, when he noticed something unusual about the ground surrounding the structure. The desert sand showed patterns of disturbance that seemed inconsistent with natural erosion and wildlife activity. Michael called Dr. Hendricks to examine the site more closely, and together they observed that the earth near the shack's foundation showed signs of having been deliberately disturbed years earlier. The soil composition was different from the surrounding area, with layers of sand and debris that suggested human activity beyond the original construction of the building. As they carefully brushed away loose sand to better examine the anomaly, they began to uncover evidence that would transform their routine historical survey into something far more significant. The team's initial discovery led them to contact local authorities, who arrived at the site within hours to begin a careful excavation process. Sheriff's deputies, experienced in handling sensitive investigations, worked alongside the researchers to methodically uncover what lay beneath the disturbed earth. The location's remoteness and the years that had passed since Derek and Amanda's disappearance meant that the site had remained undisturbed, preserved by the desert's natural tendency to cover and protect what lay beneath its surface. As the excavation progressed, investigators found personal items that provided the first concrete evidence connecting the site to the missing couple. Amanda's distinctive silver bracelet, a gift from Derek during their first year together, emerged from the sand alongside fragments of clothing and equipment that family members would later identify as belonging to the young photographers. The items had been protected from the desert's destructive forces by their burial, maintaining details that allowed for positive identification even after 7 years. The discovery site told a story of violence and concealment that investigators slowly pieced together through careful examination of the evidence. The location of the grave, positioned behind the abandoned shack and hidden from casual view, suggested that whoever was responsible for Derek and Amanda's death had been familiar with the area and had chosen the burial site specifically for its isolation and concealment. The deliberate nature of the burial indicated that their deaths were not the result of an accident or misadventure, but rather the outcome of a deliberate act of violence. Investigation of the surrounding area revealed additional evidence of human habitation near the prospector's shack, including the remains of a makeshift camp that appeared to have been occupied for an extended period. The camp's setup suggested that someone had been living at the site illegally, using the abandoned structure as shelter while maintaining a low profile to avoid detection by authorities. Personal items found at the camp included survival equipment, hunting supplies, and materials consistent with someone attempting to live off the grid in the remote desert location. The breakthrough in understanding what had happened to Derek and Amanda came when investigators discovered documentation hidden within the abandoned shack, including journals and personal papers belonging to a man named Vincent Marsh, a former military veteran who had been living as a survivalist in the Nevada desert for several years. The journals, written in Marsh's distinctive handwriting, provided a detailed account of his life in the desert and his encounters with occasional visitors to the remote area. Marsh's writings revealed a man who had become increasingly paranoid and territorial about his desert refuge, viewing any human presence as a potential threat to his secluded lifestyle. The journals described his elaborate efforts to remain hidden from authorities and his growing conviction that discovery of his illegal campsite would result in his forced return to what he called the system that he had rejected. His paranoia had intensified over the years, leading him to view even innocent visitors as potential enemies who might expose his location. The journal entries from October 1999 provided the horrifying details of what had happened when Derek and Amanda Harrison encountered Marsh's hidden camp. According to his own written account, the couple had sought shelter at the abandoned shack during a sudden sandstorm, accidentally discovering his concealed living space and inadvertently threatening the secrecy that he had worked so hard to maintain. Marsh's paranoid mindset had led him to view their presence as an existential threat to his survival, prompting him to take drastic action to protect his secret. The journals described how Marsh had confronted Derek and Amanda, initially attempting to intimidate them into leaving without revealing his presence to authorities. When the couple tried to reassure him that they had no intention of reporting his location, Marsh's paranoia had overcome his rational thinking, leading him to believe that they could not be trusted to maintain his secret. The written account detailed the violent confrontation that followed, during which Marsh had killed both Derek and Amanda in a moment of panic and rage. Marsh's own writings revealed the methodical way he had disposed of their bodies, burying them in a shallow grave behind the shack, where he believed they would never be discovered. He had then returned to their abandoned campsite to scatter their equipment and create the appearance that they had simply vanished without a trace. The journals showed that Marsh had lived with the knowledge of his crime for several years, gradually becoming more unstable as the weight of his actions took its toll on his mental state. The investigation into Vincent Marsh's background revealed a troubled individual who had struggled with post-traumatic stress and social isolation following his military service. Friends and family members described a man who had gradually withdrawn from society, becoming increasingly convinced that he could only find peace in the complete isolation of the desert. His transformation from a struggling veteran seeking solitude to a paranoid killer who would murder innocent strangers to protect his secret represented a tragic deterioration that had ultimately claimed 3 lives. Marsh himself was discovered to have died approximately 2 years after Derek and Amanda's murder, his remains found in a remote canyon where he had apparently succumbed to the harsh desert conditions during a particularly severe winter. The discovery of his body, initially unidentified, had been reported to authorities in 2001, but without any connection to the missing couple. The case had been filed away as another desert fatality. Only after the discovery of his journals and the evidence at the shack did investigators realize that Marsh's death had closed the case in the most final way possible. The revelation of Derek and Amanda's fate brought a mixture of relief and devastating sorrow to their families, who had waited 7 years for answers about what had happened to their loved ones. The knowledge that the couple had been murdered by a disturbed individual who had lived in paranoid isolation provided an explanation for their disappearance, but it also confirmed the worst fears about their violent end. Family members struggled to process the senseless nature of their deaths, killed by a stranger whose paranoia had transformed their innocent adventure into a fatal encounter. The discovery led to a comprehensive review of policies regarding illegal camping and habitation in remote desert areas, with Park Services implementing new procedures for monitoring and addressing unauthorized long-term occupation of public lands. The case highlighted the potential dangers posed by individuals who chose to live outside legal oversight, particularly those struggling with mental health issues that might lead to violent confrontations with innocent visitors. For Amanda's sister Sarah, the discovery of her sister's fate provided the closure she had sought for 7 years, allowing her to finally grieve properly and begin the process of healing. The knowledge that Derek and Amanda had died together, maintaining their partnership even in their final moments, provided some small comfort amid the overwhelming sadness of their violent end. Sarah established a memorial fund in their honor, supporting programs that combined outdoor education with mental health resources for veterans struggling with the transition to civilian life. The remote desert location where Derek and Amanda Harrison had died became a place of pilgrimage for those who had followed their story, with visitors leaving small mementos and flowers at a memorial marker erected near the site of their discovery. The marker bore a simple inscription acknowledging their passion for adventure and their commitment to sharing the beauty of wild places with others, serving as a reminder that the desert's beauty comes with inherent dangers that can transform wonder into tragedy in an instant. The case of Derek and Amanda Harrison ultimately served as a sobering reminder of the unpredictable nature of human encounters in remote wilderness areas, where the isolation that provides spiritual renewal for some can also harbor those whose mental deterioration makes them dangerous to innocent travelers. Their story became part of the larger narrative of desert survival, and the importance of understanding that the greatest dangers in wild places sometimes come not from the environment itself, but from the damaged individuals who seek refuge in its vastness.